What's happening, everyone? Steve here, Cars with Steve, and today we are going to be going over everything that you need to know about Performance Pack in the 2021 Mustang GT. Now, there are a couple things that are going to be different from the 2020 versus the 2021 year. One of the big things is that Performance Pack 2 is no longer a thing. A few things have kind of been shuffled around a little bit in the Mustang lineup as well, where we're going to have a little bit of fun figuring out all of the different features, going line by line, and figuring out exactly what each of the elements of Performance Pack will give you inside of the Mustang GT. But before we get started, I want to give a few people a shout out and a thank you. And the big reason why is because I posted a video on the Mustang Mach-E and also on the Ford Bronco comparing it to the Ford Escape. And in that video, I asked people to share it with your social networks. I was going to put everybody into a little giveaway and give somebody an Amazon gift card. But there were 3 people that said that they did it, so I'm just going to give those 3 people an Amazon gift card. So I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but I've got Adam, Jakowenko, Sebez13, and Joe Peredo. If you guys can reach out to me on Facebook, I'm going to be giving you a $10 Amazon gift card as a thank you. So on this one, anybody who does share this with your social network or share it on a forum, comment down in the comment section below letting me know that you've done it, and I'm going to put you into a draw for a future giveaway. But let's dive right into it and figure out what the Performance Pack in the 2021 Mustang has to offer. Okay guys, what we're going to do is actually start off online. We're going to go to the Ford.ca website. It's going to look the exact same in the Ford.com. Pricing is going to be a little bit different, but I want to break down what's going on with the Performance Pack this year. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the big differences is that Performance Pack Level 2 no longer exists. So we're not going to get that track-inspired tuning and a few other small things, but don't worry, the MagneRide system and a few other things can still be added in. So it's not a big thing. We're going to be covering off all of the details there. But firstly, jumping onto the Ford website. So in the 2021 Mustang, we can get Performance Pack in both the regular GT Fastback as well as the Premium Fastback, which means that you can have cloth seats or leather seats getting that performance package. Now, one thing to note if you're considering getting the regular Fastback, looking at the packages for a second here, we've got the 300 versus the 301. I highly recommend against the 300 pack of the vehicle. And here's why. If we take a look at the screen there, look at this tiny little display that we're looking at in the middle. So tiny little display. On top of that, we don't have any selectable toggle switches, drive modes, things like that. I don't like the look of this. If your end goal is to eventually sell this thing, if you're going to be hanging on to it for life, I still do recommend at least looking at the 301 version. It's going to cost you a couple dollars extra, but look at this. It gives you Sync 3, which gives you Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support. So you'd have the ability to use navigation on your cell phone. So you can use Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, and things like that. On top of that, it gives you a series of selectable toggle switches. So it just looks cleaner. I personally think it looks better. It's worth this couple extra bucks that you're going to pay, and if you finance it, it's not going to make a huge difference overall. So definitely recommend, look at, if you're going with the cloth interior, at least the 301A package. Now, when we get into the 400 pack, now first of all, actually, what I want to say, I love this. This would be my ideal Mustang build that we're looking at. It's the 401 version of the vehicle in the antimatter blue. I absolutely love this blue. Now, looking at it on the computer screen also doesn't do it justice, because when you see it in person, this antimatter blue actually almost looks black. It's a super, super deep blue, and it looks incredible. But the one that we're looking at on the screen here in this GT Premium is actually got Performance Pack in it. That's why we've got these wheels. We've got a few other things that are make it look a little bit meaner on the outside. But what we're going to do is actually jump into the packages for a second, and let's scroll down. Black appearance package looks okay. California Special, matter of preference on that one. But we're getting into the GT Performance Pack. Now, that's going to be the same feature set in the US and the Canadian version. So we've got a lot of things. We've got some different wheels. We've got BREMBO 6-piston calipers and a number of other things. So the idea behind this video is we're literally going to go line by line, not necessarily in the order that Ford lists them, but we're going to go through everything that you need to know about Performance Pack in the 2021 Mustang. Now, at the end of the day, this pack costs $4,500, but the performance that you get out of it is incredible. The end cost, if you were to do all this work yourself, you're pushing easily $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 plus in order to get all of this work done. You can get it done from the factory and make sure that you're also covered under that factory warranty. So let's dive into it and have a little bit of fun while we're doing it. Okay, so starting off, we're going to be talking about the axle ratio. So in Performance Pack, you're going to get either a 3.73 or a 3.55 axle ratio. So let's kind of dive into that first and foremost in order for you to get a better understanding of how it works. So when you press the gas, it's going to send power from the engine into the transmission, down the drive shaft, into the rear differential, into the axle cranks, the axle shafts, which then rotate the tire. So what does that exactly mean? Now, when it comes down to it, so the axle ratio, also known as the final drive ratio, essentially what that means is the gears themselves are actually referred to by their ratio. So it's going to be a 3.15, a 3.31, or a 3.55 in the EcoBoost, and then either a 3.31, a 3.55, or a 3.73 in the GT. Now, when we're looking specifically at the Performance Pack, the automatic version of the vehicle is going to have a 3.55 ratio, whereas the manual is going to have a 3.73. Now, what that means is the drive shaft needs to rotate 3.73 times in order for the wheels to spin once. So that number, take that into account kind of as we move forward here. So as I mentioned, in the automatic 3.55, inside of the manual, you're going to be in a 3.73. So why do you even care about your axle ratio? Why do you want to change the axle ratio? That is a good question. And the reason why is because having a higher axle ratio is going to give you better acceleration, which means you're going to be quicker off the line when you want to accelerate. So that's going to give you, so if you have a higher ratio, it's going to give you more of that like seat back, head back as you kind of floor it. It's going to give you more of that acceleration that you really want inside of a performance vehicle. So it's really, really cool. Now, one of the downsides to it though is that although you'll get that extra power, it is going to affect gas mileage and a few other things, but you're not necessarily getting a performance vehicle for the gas mileage. So when you ask the question, what is the best gear ratio, you have to ask yourself, what are you going to be doing with the vehicle? If you want a higher top speed and a slower launch, you're going to want to go with a lower ratio. But if you want quicker acceleration and easier burnouts, go with a higher ratio. So as I mentioned, you're going to have to ask yourself a few questions. What are you going to be doing with the vehicle? Are you going to be using it as a daily driver? If that's the case, a 3.31 or a 3.55 will be more than enough. So we know inside the Performance Pack, it's got either a 3.55 or a 3.73. So the Performance Pack might be a little bit of overkill if you're just using this thing as a daily driver. Now, on the other side of it, if you're using it as a daily driver with some track use, Performance Pack is kind of the best of both worlds. Because you're going to have in the manual the 3.73 axle ratio, it's going to give you good performance, but it's also going to give you pretty decent fuel economy at the same time. So again, it's going to depend on what you're going to be doing with it. Now, on the last side of things, if you're going to be using the vehicle strictly on the track, you're going to want to have either a 3.73 axle ratio or a 4.10. And the big reason why is because you're going to get more of that performance, more of that quicker acceleration right from the get-go when you slam that gas pedal down. Now, the Performance Pack is going to give you that 3.73 axle ratio in the manual, which means that if you want something a little bit higher, you're going to have to do something aftermarket. So a little bit of aftermarket work. You're going to have to upgrade that rear differential, and you're going to have to do some extra tuning in the vehicle as well. Because when we upgrade that axle ratio, we need to make sure that we're tuning the vehicle in order to make sure that the vehicle can support the changes that we're making. And that's going to be the same if we do any type of work. We add in a supercharger or turbocharger, whatever the case may be, we need to do extra work. We can't just throw in that one part and hope it works. It's not the way machines work. You've got to upgrade a few other components if you just change around one thing. In the Performance Pack, we get the TORSEN differential. So what that means is it's essentially a purely mechanical differential, and it's actually genius when you get down into the technology behind it, because it all has to do with moving power between the wheels. Because what the vehicle will do is the vehicle's electronic brain, if it recognizes that one of the wheels is slipping, what it's going to do is take power and push it into another wheel in order to give you better traction. So it's a very, very smart system that we get inside of this TORSEN differential. So it's an incredible feature. Now, when we get on the outside of the vehicle in Performance Pack, we've got some upgraded wheels, and these things look kind of sweet. So the regular wheels are going to be an 18-inch tire with a maximum speed rating of 270 kilometers or 168 miles per hour. In comparison, the Performance Pack is going to give you a 19-inch wheel. Now, it's also going to give you much better performance at over 370 kilometers an hour on your top speed. So these tires are incredible. Essentially, what you're looking at is a Pirelli P0 tire inside of this thing, thing, which is going to essentially be street legal slick rubber, which is incredible. So it's really, really good as a summer tire, but you do not want to be using this thing in the winter. Its rear wheel drive is already a little bit challenging to deal with in the winter time, but with these slicked out tires, it would be game over. You'd get zero traction inside of it in the winter time. Now, on top of that, you get the BREMBO 6-piston front calipers. Now, when it comes down to it, looking at the vehicle itself, it's rear-wheel drive, sure, but when you go to brake, what happens? Boom, you go to brake and all of a sudden, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the front of the vehicle. So having these performance brakes in the front is going to improve your stopping performance astronomically. BREMBO, they've been around for a long, long time, and they are an incredible company. Next up, we've got our painted strut brace. As you can see there, a strut brace right over top. Really, really nice. So it's also known as a strut bar or a shock brace, which connects the strut towers under your hood. Now, the benefit of strut bars in a Mustang is that it gives you better handling, better for sharper corners. Next up is going to be a larger radiator. So cooling is important in any vehicle, but with a performance vehicle, it's even more important as the temperature in the engine is normally going to run hotter. Now, a larger radiator is going to help keep the engine cooler, leading to improved performance. Now, that's one of the reasons why your car typically feels like it's a little bit more powerful when it's colder outside. Kind of neat. After that, we've got the upsized rear sway bar, which we can just kind of make out underneath. It's got that pink tag and that writing on it there. So the upsized rear sway bar, which is sometimes referred to as the rear anti-sway bar, is a component of the vehicle's suspension system. Remember, the stiffer the suspension, the more stable your vehicle is going to be. With the GT Performance Pack, the upsized sway bar will absolutely bring better stability to the vehicle, which means it's going to handle better. Next part is going to be a K-brace, which we can just kind of make out here. So K-brace is on the underside of the vehicle, and again, it helps to improve stability in the vehicle, especially when taking those tighter corners. Next up, we're going to also have a performance rear wing. So looking at it, it's an exterior upgrade, which is going to help bring a little bit more downforce to the vehicle while you're driving. Now, the spoiler itself isn't too large, which is great because the bigger it gets, the more downforce and drag it's going to create. So it really is that perfect size. On the inside of the vehicle, we've got an aluminum instrument panel, so it's a spun aluminum look. We can kind of see the side-by-side, so without and then with performance pack. So we've got a spun aluminum look. We're going to zoom in on that one in just a second. But on top of that spun aluminum look, we also have the gauge pack, which is going to show the oil pressure as well as the vacuum gauge just above that center console screen. Let's zoom in a little bit more for you to take a quick peek, and here we go. All right, so nice look to this thing. Again, you've got to see this thing in person, but it does look incredible. Next up, we're going to have some unique tuning, and that's going to be unique tuning the chassis, the EPAS, ABS, stability control. And the big reason why is because we've bumped up the axle ratio, we've improved performance on a few other parts, so we have to make sure that the vehicle is tuned to be able to take into account everything that we're going to be changing, everything that we have changed. And as I mentioned, even doing something as simple as a Stage 2 ECU tune, you're also going to have to make sure that you tune the vehicle properly. You may need to add in some other parts over and above that as well. Now, on top of that, next up are the heavy-duty front springs. Now, if we look at a traditional suspension system, we've got shock absorbers or struts, the springs, linkages, bushings, bearings, and joints. Now, one thing that I absolutely recommend you look at adding in, especially if you're getting the performance pack, is going to be the MagneRide damping system. This thing is incredible because instead of a traditional damper, MagneRide offers dampers that are filled with a magnetic fluid. So let's take a look at the traditional versus a MagneRide. So left-hand side without MagneRide, and then the right-hand side with. So during regular driving, the fluid inside of these dampers is relaxed. What that means is it's going to give you a very comfortable drive. So when you corner very hard, the magnetic particles will line up, which stiffens the suspension, so it does help. So as you're taking a corner, rather than your vehicle being like this as you're turning, it's going to be closer to this. So it handles really, really nicely. It hugs the road that little bit more. And if you're getting performance pack, you're going after a vehicle with performance. So getting the MagneRide system is an absolutely huge recommendation. I definitely look at doing it from the factory because from the factory compared to aftermarket, you're saving like 50% on the overall install cost. So if you're getting Performance Pack 1, definitely take a look at that MagneRide system as well. Next up, one other thing to consider is going to be the active valve performance exhaust. Now, the big reason why, actually, let's jump outside for a second, take a listen. So that, from the factory, is incredible. So the active valve performance exhaust gives you the ability to switch between 4 different modes. So you've got a quiet mode, you can do a quiet mode on startup, you can have your normal mode, your sport mode, and the track. So it's going to give you a different sound, and it's going to tweak a few things as you go. So I definitely recommend look at the active valve performance exhaust. You don't have to get performance pack in order to get the active valve, but if you want MagneRide, you do need to get the performance package inside of the 2021 Mustang. Well, folks, that was a look at the 2021 Ford Mustang GT Performance Pack. What did you think? Now, a couple of things to note, as I mentioned, so Performance Pack Level 2 has essentially gone away inside of the 2021 Mustang, but really it was a slightly different rear sway bar that was going to be included in there, MagneRide, and a few other things. So we can still add a few of those things on, instead looking at the 2021. But I personally recommend looking at the GT Performance Pack if you want something that's got that little bit of extra oomph. Now, if your local dealer has one of these things, trust me, get in behind the wheel of one, and I guarantee you're going to be sold on it. It is an incredible system. It's worth a couple extra bucks, especially if you're going to be doing something where you might take it on the track every now and again, or you might want to put your foot down and race some people every now and again, because at the end of the day, that's why we get Mustangs, is so that you can kind of have a little bit of fun with them, right? Now, there are some other things that you can look at over and above these things that I recommended, which are going to give you incredible performance. You can do a simple ECU tune, which, I mean, you're looking at a couple $100 to push out an extra 50 to 100 points, which I think is absolutely worth it. And if you want to go bigger, you can also look at adding in a supercharger with a couple of the other necessary components. It might set you back $10,000, but at the same time, you'd push out almost 700 horsepower, which is kind of veering and teetering into that Shelby 500 territory. So definitely something to consider there. But if you enjoyed the content today, make sure that you give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing with the bell notifications on, and don't forget to share it with your social network or a forum so that you can be entered into the next giveaway. Until I see you guys next time, make sure you stay safe.